But I just want to officially welcome everybody. So, welcome. I'm Jesse. I'm with the Permaculture Institute of North America, or PINA. So, I work with PINA, and this is a co sponsored event. We do this PINA, but also the Association for Regenerative Culture. That's Lee and Zan as well. And we regenerate.earth, which is Karine. So that's kind of the co-sponsorship. We're all sort of putting this together, including the guides that Karine will talk about later, and a summit coming up in August all about this very topic. And we'll talk about that later too. So welcome again, and we're excited to co-host this town hall. We plan to have more of these with your support and feedback, and we have working groups as well. So if people are wanting to be like plugging in and actually like sharing information and contributing in that way, we have the possibility to do that. So just to say again, I am recording this presentation. So if you have any concerns about that, just leave your camera off. There's no problem with that. If we do go into breakout rooms, those are not recorded, and we ask everybody to turn their camera on in the breakout rooms. And those will be like small groups, 2-3 people, something like that. So we are recording. Yes. Okay, cool. So let me introduce Lee Barnes. Lee Barnes is sort of the reason that this town hall and summit and disaster resiliency initiative got started. And I'll let him tell that story, but let me read a little bit of his bio so you know who he is. So Lee Barnes, PhD, is president and founder of ARK, the Association for Regenerative Culture, and a passionate advocate for permaculture and environmental sustainability. With a background in environmental horticulture, Lee has dedicated over 3 decades to educating and empowering individuals to embrace regenerative practices. He co-founded the Southeastern Permaculture Gathering and has been instrumental in organizing numerous seed and plant shares, emphasizing the importance of preserving heirloom and native plant varieties. Lee's expertise extends to regional natural history, old-growth forest preservation, sustainable agriculture, and dowsing. He is a strong believer in fostering a sense of place and inspiring individuals to take responsibility for regenerating the future. And I might add, a great friend and ally and support with PINA. So Lee, so awesome to introduce you, and go ahead and take it away, my friend.
Well, I thank you all for being here. Several of you have been joining us for several months, and I do just a general check-in of where we're at. I was on the edge of Helen, just west of Asheville, and got a foot of rain. Asheville got close to 30 inches. So I'm going to do just a little slideshow to kind of bring you up to speed where we're at 8 months later. We're still open, but some sections are still hard to get to. So, and this will be repeated, I'm sure, by Karine, but this is a multi-level project where we're trying to do a quick guide and then deeper dives and resources that are searchable. So,
well, Lee might be coming back, but maybe we should pass it over to Karine, huh? What do you think, Karine? Do you want to do your bit first? Lee normally sets the stage and sort of tells us the inspiration and the reasoning behind it, and then gives us an update on damage and progress in terms of Helene and all that sort of stuff. So that's an important framing, we think, but he seems to be having some technical issues. So maybe Karine can pick it up from here, and I'll read your introduction, Karine, real quick first. And then she'll sort of introduce the project a little bit more and let y'all know where we're at with that, and set up the stage for, we're really hoping to do a design charrette together where we just have some general high level questions about how to distribute these guides, how to be an effective agent for change when disaster strikes, especially in the North American continent. How can we mobilize, without stretching any of our personal selves too thin? So what sort of networks and communication trees and that sort of thing can we set up? So that's where we're going with this. But first, let me introduce Karine. And there it is. Karine Brennan is a highly experienced permaculture designer and educator with a passion for food forestry, small farms, food security, and community building. Lee's back. She has taught permaculture design. Hey, Lee. I'm gonna read Karine's bio real quick.
yeah,
That way,
perfect.
if we lose you, she can just jump into her bit.
Yeah.
But see if you can figure out the screen share in the meantime. So Karine has taught permaculture design extensively in the United States and internationally. And Karine responded to the Haiti earthquake in 2010. And we had, I forget which one that was, maybe Disaster Town Hall 2, where Karine showed some pictures of that experience in Haiti. So check that out if you missed it. And she was organizing a permaculture team who used design principles to integrate regenerative solutions into that disaster response and recovery. She worked with others to expand these efforts and has continued to communicate the opportunities to rebuild human systems harmed by disasters in more regenerative ways. Karine is a permaculture farm in Florida and is a PINA diplomate and board member, and she teaches permaculture design online and in person. So we got our bios. How's the screen share, Lee? Is that working for you or nah?
So, can everybody hear me at this point?
Yeah. Yeah,
Let's just punt on the slideshow and
we'll do a narrative version.
yeah. So, the slideshow is just to kind of take us up to speed. It's been almost 8 months.
And Lee, let me just say for folks, if you want to see the slideshow, Lee's been sort of building one. So he was going to add some new stuff to it, but you can see his old ones on any of the old disaster town halls. So check that out just to get that context. And then take it away, Lee. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's perfect. The previous screen PowerPoints were showing the destruction. Like I said, I was on the edge of it, didn't get hurt too bad. I had power and water because I'm right in the city of Waynesville, and everybody didn't have any electricity or internet or cell phone for 6 days. But basically, the damage that I saw is the greatest I've ever seen anywhere. Parts of this they're calling, I think the Nolichucky River is like a 12 to 1500 year flood event. And I've been up in the mountains here for 25 years, and we've already had 200-year floods 2 weeks apart. And then, everyone's calling Helen the greatest. It was bigger than the big 2016. But I was going to show you some pictures and go through the fact there were, something like 2,000 landslides. I didn't memorize that. 400,000 acres of national forests affected. The problem is we live in a topography where all the utilities are down in the valleys. That's how people traveled in commerce originally. So, roads, power lines, internet, all that, sewer, follow the rivers, and that's what got flushed out so bad. So, just jumping ahead to what's going on now, I had some pictures that show there are still, there's been a lot of work, and it's amazing what the community has done, the local community and the community that's come in. But there are a lot of damaged buildings down in the floodplains. And I would point out we are still open for tourism because we can't lose 2 years of, the fall. This happened right during our peak color season, and that's billions of dollars of income to the region. Trout fishing alone is over $1 billion in Western North Carolina. So I'm showing pictures of trees down in the woods that I actually saw, and they're not being chopped up and put on the sides of the road, although there's still piles like that. And then I actually went up to the watershed. I was going to go up to the parkway just to fall it down. And basically, the river is much wider and much rockier. There's one Logan, that now has a rock bar a couple hundred yards into it that was never there before. So there's physical changes. And I had a picture of a fire. Last fall we had, or early spring, I guess, we had 3 or 4, like 4 to 5,000 acre fires, and there's firewood out there that dries another year. We're going to have more problems. So that's part of the emphasis of putting the priorities onto the fire module and some other things. And I'm just going to punt with that. And I apologize for the technology.
Yeah, that's okay. That helps set the stage. And of course, Helene was the instigating event that started this initiative, but we recognize fully that there are all sorts of natural disasters and man-made disasters all over the place, seemingly increasingly, right? So Karine is busy working on all these guides. So I'll let Karine tell you about kind of where we stand and what we're up to. And then I also have a link that I can share that people can download these or upload these files and look at them, and feedback is welcome. These are very much in the beta stages, but Karine has put the bull's work into all of this. So go take it away, Karine, and let us know like where we're at with the initiative.
Okay, thank you. So we're getting to the point where we're starting to publish these manuals pretty regularly, and the there's multiple aspects to this project, but the core aspect we're focusing on right now is creating manuals that have ways that individuals, groups, regions can respond and prepare for these disasters and then recover in a more regenerative way. And there's so much technology out there in the permaculture world and in related worlds that have better ways of recovering than what most people are doing. A lot of people are recovering in ways that are going to make them vulnerable to future disasters, for instance. And I personally know people who live near the shore or in a flood area who have been flooded 3 times now in Florida. It's like, wait, really? You like this? You want to keep going through this? So there's better ways to do things. There's, this information can be used by cities. It can be used by churches or frontlines groups. It can be used by individuals. So we've tried to cover the gamut of that by providing checklists for preparation that individuals can easily use and print off and like put in their go bag or however they want to do it. We also, those checklists are very useful for organizations to help their communities prepare. And then our main focus, though, is the deep dive area, a database of a knowledge base for regenerative practice to both prevent disasters, mitigate, and recover from them. So that's the exciting part of this. It makes us different. I've found in putting together these checklists that even that checklist part is important because all of this information is in all different places. For instance, I did a couple of courses that FEMA has online. One of them is for animals on different disasters and how to respond. And that's nowhere on these other checklists. So we're putting them all together in one place so that people can have easily access to knowledge. I mean, it took me several hours to get through that course. Not everybody's going to. I distilled it down into a checklist and a little bit of additional information. So that's the general idea. Like, give people an easy access point of action items that they can do now, and give them food for thought on, especially if they're recovering. Like, hey, let's not do it the same way. Let's recover to make yourself more resilient and to make your whole community more resilient. And also to cut down on the pollution that's causing all of this increased disaster pressures. There's so many. Having been on the disaster front lines, I work for VOAD, Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster, in Los Angeles, and I've been in communication with and working with various frontline groups. A lot of them are very small. They're very nimble because they're small. They're embedded in the community. They are able to do things that FEMA and these other organizations will, worldwide organizations like Red Cross will never be able to do. And we think that's an entry point into responding more regeneratively. So I think those small organizations are really important. And if they have more tools, like these manuals, like a library that they can go search for solutions, like a network of experts that they can draw on, it will be easier for them to respond more regeneratively. And one exciting thing about this project is, in the process of doing the research, and I'm reaching out to people who are on the front lines or who have been permaculture designers, developing various strategies for disaster situations and resilience. And there's some real expertise out there, and it's exciting to meet these people who do have this expertise, and not just permaculturists, but ecologists. There's a tremendous project in my region with mangroves and oysters to reduce the storm surge from hurricanes. So And that's being done by nonprofit ecological groups and university partnerships and all this kind of stuff. So we're looking at how can we bring this stuff together? How can we make all of this work better known and make it easier to find, for people to find this information, and easier for them to implement it? And that's really the overall goal. And the three organizations together have different parts that we can plug in to make this goal a reality. So PINA has this fabulous network of professionals who have a lot of solutions and have tremendous amount of knowledge between them. And we can tap into the international network as well. In Australia, they have some very interesting stuff that they've been doing to respond to disasters, because it's been bad over there. And then Association for Regenerative Culture has been doing support work already for nonprofits, and they have a lot of potential to work in a lot of different directions, and is funding this project mostly, completely actually, almost. And then We Regenerate is a database of information, which Connie and Diana are involved in too, that allows people to find regenerative resources. And that's regenerative resources in general, but we're going to be plugging in all these disaster resources as part of that process as well. So that's kind of the ecosystem that we're working with. And we originally started talking about, well, let's target people who are leading the way in this field already, whether that's ecologists or bioregional people or nonprofits, frontlines groups, maybe government organizations, especially at a local level. They're easier to approach, etc., because they can spread the word faster than we can to individuals in their communities. So that's, part of the idea is to make this material available to those groups that will then amplify what we're trying to do. And but we're also trying to make it available to individuals, because it'll be more useful to the groups if it is. So anyway, that's probably enough briefing. I'd love to get feedback or go to the next session part of this.
Yeah. Thank you, Karine. So the next part will be the hopefully getting everybody in a little breakout room chatting with each other so we can participate, because that's always more fun. And you never know what kind of like brilliant or missing pieces that we can pick up through all this shared knowledge. So we have some prompts, but before we do that, let me just point out, Karine mentioned the international scene, and we're going to be having a disaster summit coming up. Oh, let me copy and paste that just so you know the name. And then there's a landing page that I'm going to put in here. You can just put your name in or email into the landing page, and you'll get all the updates about when when somebody gets signed up to the summit that's new, or when we get our website built so it's ready to be announced. This page right here is just a email capture page. So if you're interested in the summit, it's called the Disaster Regeneration Summit. Design, preparedness, response, and disaster preparedness, response, and design from the permaculture lens. So it's really just the culmination and a bigger sort of event from what these town halls have been. And it's August 18th through the 23rd. So it's that week. And I'm so happy to announce that David Holmgren has agreed to participate as one of our key leaders for one of the days. So each day we'll have a theme and a topic, and it'll be about 2.5 hours, where it'll be in person and it'll be online, Emily, but it'll focus on like a presentation component and then more breakout rooms and working group components, because we want to actualize this and not just have it be more content that we consume, but like how can we actually get people who are energized by this conversation and this issue to plug in whatever way that makes sense for them. Lee, yeah.
I just wanted to show a couple of possible covers to indicate we really have physical stuff going, and it's not showing well on my screen.
Oh, I can see it good.
That was the intro to the intro. 9 pages. The general guide, what are we, 60 something?
Yeah, I think it's 47 pages for the general.
Okay. It's also printable in black and white, so people can save money. And it's a book form. It is really a book when you start to put these manuals together. So
That's right.
But I'm so happy to see physical stuff and get to the point where we're talking about distribution.
Yep, and that's exactly what we're talking about. So the question before us is like, who is our target audience? If we are trying to be, quickly responsive to a disaster or working with people ahead of disaster in disaster-prone areas, who is our target audience? And then what are the channels by which we can reach out to those folks? And we're asking for y'all to help us today figure that out, or at least map that space. So here are the breakout questions we'd like people to engage with in the breakout rooms. Hey, wow, look at all these people coming back. Hey, everybody. I guess
We're back.
Welcome. We're back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So one of the things we can do, it's up to y'all. If you don't feel like hopping on the screen and sharing a little bit of a summary, then just put it in the chat. If you don't mind hopping on the screen and sharing a little bit of a summary or sort of the things that seem to be most important, we're really trying to harvest this information and actualize it. So we kind of need to hear how did it go? What came up? Oh, cool. Somebody posted in there. Let's start with reading this one. Disaster agencies. Okay, so you guys, Karine, we're making a bunch of lists of disaster agencies. HOAs. Yep. Mother groups. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, and anyone who wants to talk from our group, add anything. Those are just notes I took.
Thanks for taking the notes. I'm going to put it into the other notes too. So what kind of came up? Who do we need to be reaching out to or already have connections with? And if anybody has insight on our target audience, that's also super useful.
I'll go. We recognize 3 in the group that recognize that there are public information officers and safety groups that are plugged into the system, and they know where the help is needed. And the other side of it, a lot of people don't have the access to materials, to look at a computer screen or even go to a library. We talked about libraries are generally very helpful to supply space and justify their existence by making the place better. So, in my county, I know a lot of it's a small enough county. I know a lot of the people that I could actually take physical copies to. Or send them and then have a follow-up meeting. So we think a certain part of it's going to have printed copies.
Kind of along that, on that same side, Connie just shared a picture which I can share here. Y'all can see this, I assume.
Okay.
Kind of small. See if I can.
It's good.
Okay. Yeah, I like how you're thinking about paper versus electronic and actually have hand delivering paper copies. To libraries, town halls, community centers, schools, community association, churches, nonprofits. Yeah. Now, nothing's in the electronic category. That doesn't mean not to also share with them the PDF, right? How are y'all thinking of that?
Yeah. I'm just thinking that the electronic dissemination can be a lot wider, a lot broader, and it could be repeatable. The cost for paper is also, pretty onerous unless we can get some funding for it. So you want to limit the paper for those people who would not normally have easy access to electronic format. And it's because otherwise it just becomes more trash.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point. Cool. Anything else that popped up on people's minds?
One issue that came up in discussing with Peace, who is in Uganda, is that not everyone speaks English. Most people, he said, do, understand English, and I'm guessing just from my many years ago experience that people in rural areas are more likely to not speak English. And so the question of doing translations, either English or French in the case of Uganda, I forgot about this, but AI can actually do a pretty decent translations. But
Oh,
he said that his group also can organize translations.
cool. That's great to know. I've been using AI a little bit. I didn't know it would do translations that.
Oh yeah, AI could do numerous translations, and
Okay.
I would say that what we could do is we could even set up like a page with a QR code, and then just have, if you need this, have it written in various, key languages. If you need this copy in Spanish or in blah blah blah, here's the QR code, and we can just have the translations electronic.
Mm,
Unless we know that we're distributing it to a specific, Spanish speaking community or other speaking community.
yeah. Emily, have your hand raised, please.
Just wanted to jump in on the AI translating. I do a bit of translating and I have played with AI a bit. I would say don't rely on it 100%. The stuff that I've seen is that a lot of times it does a very serviceable job, but I would say that if using AI for translating is something that you want to pursue, having a second set of eyes just to like double check is very, very important. AI can be a great tool, but that has been my experience where sometimes things are wrong in a way that if you were relying on that information like you would be for something like this, it could be not as helpful. So just a general sort of encouraging warning there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's always the consideration of the additional impact of using AI. It's not exactly regenerative.
Yeah, right. It does not. And Emily, you also had a really good point, I think, in the chat about like having regional liaisons. That's something that both PINA and ARK and we Regenerate are all interested in. So,
yeah, I'm wondering about just like if there is eventually maybe just like a sign up kind of opportunity of saying, this is where I'm from. This is like the amount of work I'd be willing to do. The conversation I was talking with Lee in our small group, and just the problem can be, at least in my experience, that smaller government agencies, they don't necessarily have boots on the ground who are working in community, who know, all of the different community groups that are working. But if you had somebody who was willing to do that, they just might be able to disseminate that information in ways that would be surprising and far-reaching. And also, like, regional knowledge is so specific and so valuable. It's so difficult to be able to take this kind of really important information and get it to the places it needs to go, unless you already have, a finger on the pulse of what that community is doing. So hopefully it would lessen the load of work for people who are making that information and share it a little bit more intentionally and in a more far-reaching way.
Yeah, and I would second to that. I would add to that. Just for example, in Tucson, with heat issues, there have been different organizations working on, heat preparation and mitigation and education for a long time. So there's no need to replicate, reinvent the wheel in a lot of these communities that have once you identify the who's who and where.
yes.
There's already a lot of information.
Yes, exactly. I think, and Lee has talked about this, and we've talked about it in PINA, but ideally there'd be paid jobs for this sort of pollinator work regionally, where people are doing the mapping and are sort of like understanding the scene and having personalized connections, and then able to respond when a disaster happens. So,
yeah,
beautiful.
we have and like Seal says, there's already existing organizations and structures that are being paid that we could plug into and have them help distribute this. As far as the materials already ready, yes, I hear you, and there's some really great materials out there. I found that most of them were not complete, and by combining a number of them, it was a better product. But I also I think it's really good to not be competing with them, but cooperating with them. Our unique thing that we're offering is the deep dive case studies and techniques on how to do this regeneratively all in one place. And that fact that we have this library that's continuing to build on those regenerative solutions. I don't know anybody that's doing that to the degree that we're doing it.
Well, we have the benefit of having Brad Lancaster here.
Yes.
Oh.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yes. So,
you know,
and,
it depends.
you know, and the other thing is because we're not into competing, we're into cooperating. How can we support the people that are doing it in regional areas? So we've thought about having a speakers bureau and promoting their work on the website. There's a lot of different ways that we can raise up the people that are already doing the work and make it easier for people to find them in their regional areas.
Yep, exactly. Well, that's a perfect segue, actually, because the next breakout room and the final breakout room prompt is here. I'll put it in the chat. Is about the mechanisms, but it's also about who is doing the work and how can we synergistically support those folks without, overburdening them or bringing something more that they have to do on their to-do list. So trying to find those like weaving, how could we support and uplift Brad Lancaster's work and him to us as well. So we'll go into another breakout if everybody's cool with that. But Karine, actually, I'm going to have you run these breakout rooms because I got to bounce out of here.
So anybody want to talk and say what you came up with or share it in the chat? Don't all talk at once.
I can jump in. We let's see, we talked about using social media, of course, and there was some thought that YouTube was the best platform at this point, and there was a lot of talk about the level of noise and how do you get through, because all these social media platforms are just saturated. So how do you channel it, and how do you get the SEO, the search engine optimization, how to optimize that. We talked about the diversity of populations, affected communities, and everything from like houseless people in Tucson, which is a huge problem in 113-degree heat, rural Mexico, and language issues, the need to, I guess someone said we can't be all things to everyone. So, focusing on the, I guess, maybe tiered audiences, because there are going to be all these diversity issues. There was a comment which I really resonated, was getting feedback from our target audience, like our affected communities, in terms of the material. And then a bigger issue came up in context to Chihuahua, Mexico, which is in, I guess, a 1,200-year drought, and how food security is becoming a bigger issue, and that actually affects almost all the different risks across the board, but that maybe that was also one to begin to look at. So, of course, permaculture is all about food. So those are some things we talked about. Yeah.
That's important. And that could be covered more deeply in the deep dive section, food security. And people are trying to figure it out as we go, because people are trying to grow stuff in an ecology that they've never had to grow in before.
Right.
Your peace foundation. Oh, I'm gonna move that person. Okay.
The Peace Foundation. Peace Foundation is permaculture, education, action, and community empowerment. That's the abbreviation of the Peace Foundation is abbreviation of all that. So we exist because of climate change effects here. Where we are affected by mainly landslides, floods, hunger, malnutrition as a result of food insecurity. So we use the knowledge of permaculture to sensitize communities, to educate communities, and also to build community groups that we work with to promote regeneration and restoration along areas where the ecosystem is destroyed. So, of course, there's a big challenge of loss of wood. We are in a mountainous area, Rwenzori region, neighboring the Democratic Republic of Congo. So through permaculture, we get the platform and the audience, even from leaders, from government. They give us attention because we are a pioneering organization, grassroots organization, introducing the concept and practices of permaculture in the community here. So local government, conservation organizations like Uganda Wildlife Authority, National Forest Authority, they are now all our friends because they like what we do. So besides design work, which we are doing on our site, we have a lot of work in the community where landslides are happening, where flooding is a big issue. Like last time we did a mass tree planting of indigenous trees, which was supported by the kingdom, by the cultural institution here. Maybe when I join the working group, I'll share some of these links and the videos. But at the moment, I think what we are discussing is really urgent here. There's a need for the community. And if we use the approach we are talking about, I think we shall impact more. The issue of language, of course, it emerged, but it's something which we can work out with through the groups we work with, through teachers, like I mentioned in the other group. Then you realize that because of food insecurity, hunger and malnutrition, everyone, especially children and women, are at the center of permaculture work. And of course, issues of culture where men have different positions when it comes to provision of food, and women and children are at the center of food and firewood, firewood for cooking and water. So when climate change happens and those issues of water scarcity, women and children are most at risk. And it's because of this that they are at the center of the permaculture, because in most of our events and activities, they are at the center. So I would look really forward to first joining the working group and also accessing these other resources and materials and information, so that among the other groups we work with, because we work with cluster farmer groups and cultural groups, so we can see how to leverage with our already existing infrastructure and capacity. Then we see how we can expand what we are talking about here. I really see this as a very great thing, especially for the community here where we are, because besides the natural disasters we are talking about, the flooding, the landslides, the hurricane, the winds, we also have issues of conflict in the neighboring Congo, where every time and again we receive refugees, and before they are taken to the camps, they first live with the community here. So while they are here, there are issues of no cooking energy, there are issues of no water. So you really realize that by the time central government comes in, the resilience, the situation here, the safety net, the safety nets here are already weak. So if this knowledge comes forth, I think it wanna build the capacity of our community here to want to understand, to respond, and to manage this disaster at micro level and macro level. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And what you were saying, somebody was saying about making sure we have a feedback loop in, so that we get information like this is essential, and that we're actually serving serving people who are in the situations and, you know, providing what is actually useful. So that's something we will work on for sure. And also gaining the knowledge that you guys are learning on the front line, which
Local
is super
knowledge.
valuable. And anybody else comment about what you discussed?
I came in late, and I apologize for that. It's just a very difficult day in scheduling for me. I attended the first disaster planning group of months ago. I was
Yeah.
last fall or last spring.
Yeah, last fall.
Yeah, I attended that full one. I was there from the beginning. But so I knew this is important, and I'm sorry I missed it. But I joined a great breakout group, and we discussed what I was able to share based on my experience working in public health emergency planning for many years, and how after we had a tornado here in 2011, they're not very common. I'm up in Western Massachusetts in the Berkshire Hills.
Yeah.
But we have them too, and we can certainly have them again. And we've also had hurricanes come in inland to this area and flood people out. Nothing as severe as those of you in the areas, but
non-traditional.
we recognize the importance of reaching out. At that time, we got grants from FEMA and from the state government to reach out to nonprofit organizations that were serving those with special needs, and to get their staff and as much as possible the families of those in need to learn things beforehand. And those in my breakout group thought that would be a great source for distributing information, because I know that when we worked in public health, we didn't have anyone in permaculture or with that kind of systemic understanding related to the land and food. And so I think it would be welcome. And then somebody else in our group suggested using the schools, and we have done that. The superintendent recognizes the diverse population that comes to the school, and how important it is for the material that we provided digitally for them to include in their newsletter. And I guess we could have asked them to actually provide it on paper also, but we didn't do that at the time. But certainly for online distribution, that should be a great source. And then more specialized and more recently, I'm now in a study group of homeschoolers. Somebody suggested homeschoolers as a very receptive and my study group, my son is already past the homeschool age, but I'm in the study group with people who are and aren't in doing active homeschooling. I did it in the past. And we're studying like first aid through homeopathy, something called practical homeopathy, not the complex stuff that you have to see a doctor and have 2-hour appointments with, which can be very helpful in some cases. But for emergencies, people need to have small kits where the bottles are like, $5 each, packed with these little pellets, and can be of tremendous help. I know that when I had an accident recently, I was able to use the common responsive homeopathic remedy of arnica to keep me from going to the emergency room, because it got me in condition that I could take care of myself at home and wouldn't need to call an ambulance. So the homeschooling group, I'm going to mention this to this homeopathy, practical homeopathy group, and those are the type of people who want to learn skills and make connections that are not the standard establishment type of approaches that often leave people in the lurch when they really need help.
Yeah, and I think some groups are going to be willing to list this stuff on their website, and in newsletters is a great idea. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, there's a lot of people that might put it in their newsletter, a lot of groups, and maybe their social media page. different groups have different ways of getting that out, but that would be one way we can increase our reach, and why I was interested in working with other groups, mainly, just as a leverage point. Anybody else have a comment?
I'm just kind of conjugating on all this, and one thought that's emerging is local disaster prep workshops, because usually these things, reacting after the fact, that versus, prepping in advance. And I think that as people become more aware, especially with all these programs we're used to being, cut with our current government, people are feeling more vulnerable. So I don't know how we would put that forward, but it seems like encouraging local workshops, prep workshops would be a good thing to do. Even if they're like online, probably you could access more people.
That's a great idea, and the summit videos will be available, but it's a great idea to and it can be localized too with local experts, which then helps make them better known in their local region.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I'm noticing just here, and I don't know how true it is in other communities, but people are, we have these people that have been, and I'm probably guilty of it myself, that people who are longtime activists tend to sort of want to do things the same way all the time. And they're holding the space, and they're not really adapting to the changes.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of complicated because they're like holding the space, but they're not really addressing the needs. So they're stuck in time. I don't know what to do about that, but I'm really noticing it here.
A lot of them don't have solutions. They're like lost. So we give them a solution. Maybe they'll put it on our website or something.
Well, and I'm just thinking out loud again, but maybe like approaching them with like, hey, want to do a workshop? We have this collaboration. How would you guys be willing to do a local workshop? Might be a way to sort of open up some of that space.
Yeah. Alfred.
I got a little bit of information on that, and we kind of touched on a little bit. I was going over kind of resources that we provide, and then Gloria kind of turned it right back into permaculture is what makes us awesome. So you mentioned everybody gets stuck in their rut, and they kind of fill their area, but it doesn't so much tie into other places. I can tell you from experience. So I spent, I don't know, a couple of decades in the federal government, and then now I'm very, very far away from that now. But I can tell you, your local emergency management and your local government offices, they have quarterly, semi-annual, and annual, they call them tabletop events, where they have to plan for, say, emergency management. And that's where somebody with a permaculture mindset may benefit most as far as the prep. Somebody in the room that when they say, hey, we had a mudslide, and you can explain the biological benefits that are in the soil that are still left in that mudslide, or we have a lot of trees down from floods, and you're like, have you ever heard of horticulture? Like, while you're pushing the brush away, if you can move it to the east county, we'll take care of it from there. Like, you can squeeze some goodness out of this catastrophe. Like, it doesn't all have to be bad, or whatever. Hey, we have to bring pumps in for our crops because of a drought. Okay. I understand horticulture. I would like to be part of the discussion of a 12-year or a 12-month game plan to get you off those pumps and get some natural irrigation back into it, so we're not tied to electricity.
Mm.
We need it now. We can all agree on that. However, in a year, how do we get back to self-sustainable, like the way the planet meant it to be? We have the knowledge to bring you back to some copacetic, way of doing things that doesn't rely on, diesel fuel and things like that. I think being part of those local discussions when the emergency management office is saying, hey, what are our 5 biggest natural threats and how are we going to handle them? Having somebody like us sitting in the room for that, because we volunteer to bring donuts and knowledge, would say, hey, you have a whole bunch of down trees. I've got a whole bunch of horticulture opportunities. If you can get them to the west side of the county, I know a guy who can take care of it from there. That may benefit way more in a 5-year time frame than us just saying, hey, I'm sorry, we're in this weird situation. How can I help? Maybe a pre-conversation may make for fertile soil for the next 20 years instead of just saying, do you need some blankets? And I've got some organic broccoli.
Can we all clone ourselves 1,000 times?
Yeah, that's great. And we're looking for leverage points like that. And ultimately mitigation and preparation and prevention is where it's at. Recovery has to be done, and we might as well recover in a regenerative way if we're going to cover. But yeah, I hear you, and that's a really interesting idea. It's great to hear from someone who has that experience in government, and we're hoping that more people that work in that area and really understand the ecosystem will get involved and let us know, give us ideas about the best approach. So thank you.
I guess I'm going to throw out another thought that I've been ruminating on is, remember many years ago when there was a massive earthquake in Mexico City? I don't know if you guys remember, a while ago, but at that time I was sort of focusing a little bit more on international development issues. And I remember reading about how they had huge numbers of people come in from the outside to help. And I remember reading about how that outside help actually disrupted all of the local capacities to help themselves. And I was thinking about that in context to here we are losing FEMA, right? Losing all these federal programs that we're accustomed to, especially, you guys, Lee, in the hurricane area. I mean, how many millions of dollars or billions were, infused into that community? So I guess in that context, I'm thinking, well, as we lose FEMA and all these social services, maybe there is a silver lining in that something we'll have to be more intentional about is bringing back the community capacity to help itself.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we, what's the best way to sort of nurture that?
Mm-hmm.
Just a thought, but maybe that's the silver lining of
I think that's an excellent point. I remember a conversation I had with someone who's a second homeowner in our community. These are usually people of higher economic wealth who come from major urban areas like New York City up here. And we were talking about my work in emergency planning. And she said, the big problem is that I'm really in the rural area and there's really bad cell phone coverage. What can I do in an emergency? I said, have you gotten to know your neighbors? And she looked at me like, because she came from the city where cell phone connections were never an issue. There were too many of them. And she couldn't understand the importance of, even though she was only here part-time during vacation time, et cetera, that she's, if there's a disaster and she's in that neighborhood, it's her neighbors that are going to count. And then their connections with the local town, which she didn't have either. So if you are in an area where there are a lot of people like that, I agree with your point, Seal. Is that how you pronounce your name? I'm sorry, I came in late.
Yeah, that's it.
That your point is so important. And having worked on grants from FEMA and bringing in people from FEMA to conferences that I organized with first responders and with leaders in the community, and especially in the faith community, they made it clear that they're counting on us and us doing this type of work with community resources in planning, and not them, because they knew back then, on who knows what's going to happen now.
Okay.
Did
Go ahead,
Leslie
Leslie.
want to speak?
Yeah, I wanted to add on to this. This came up in our conversation, and I'll let me find it to my camera here. Here you go. I feel like there's some things here that are like just asking to be connected, that are just sitting really on the surface here, that people are naming. If we understand that, in addition to the natural patterns and wisdom in nature, that permaculture comes from indigenous culture and wisdom, then that is present in a lot of the, not all, but a lot of the communities we're talking about, right? Whether that's diverse race or ethnicity or class, and what they've had to do to survive. I was at a Juneteenth concert last night that was really powerful, and the person was talking about we sustained our culture and that wisdom in order to survive. So coming in with humility about what we have to offer. And then one of my teachers, Starhawk, talks about, and I don't believe this is original to her, that in organizing, if we're coming into a community that's not our own, we start by saying, what can we do to help? And that's where we build the trust and relationship. If they say it's cleaning up the alley, then we work together to clean up the alley, or whatever it might be. And then putting forth those tools with the respect that around that indigenous leadership. And then when I was in the group, I was talking about, or we were talking about, looking at the bait, how much does this group represent who we're trying to reach? Just even the distinction between renter and owner, right? And feeling like, is this guide speaking to me and my experience, and whether we are, who we're trying to reach, and maybe that could be rolled out successively. And that the beta is an opportunity to connect with those different communities and ask them to review the guide, and then connect that into the broader rollout. Okay, I'll stop there. But I think these are go right to the heart of, and I think it is okay not to be all things to all people, or to say we're, this is where we're coming from, and we realize we need to address these things. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of build upon what Leslie said before I had to drop off real quickly a little while ago in the last breakout. It was emphasized that with trying to work with the initial audience in our beta rollout as the leader of these groups is going to help us refine and figure out exactly, with the sensitivity to those communities, what they need and how we can fill that need. And I think that's really critical for us to keep in the forefront of our heads, is that we can do as much as possible at this point, but then when we're really ready to start going out with the beta, to try to tap those leaders, because they'll know best what the next step should be.
Those are great points. This is so helpful, you guys. Love this collective wisdom. Is just awesome.
Add a contextualizing statement. Is that all right? Or so PS. I put this in, I recently did a survey, and I know I'm a newer person learning, so I am also trying to be mindful of, like, there's a lot that's been done, you all have talked about, so getting up to speed on that. I'm really lucky that one of my ongoing work is doing fund development and organizational board development for White Earth Land Recovery Project. So I really believe in following BIPOC leadership. I personally believe that's an essential ingredient. And I'm in conversation with the Native American executive director and we're to the point now where we're talking about some of this, what I'm bringing from the dominant culture, how I can be helpful, what's not. And so I'm trying to actually come from actual experience when I'm talking about some of this, and past as well, but definitely in current engagement. I have, mirrors reflected up to me, about sometimes the dominant culture I'm bringing and if that's helpful or not. So I don't mean to be speaking just theoretically.
Yeah, I recently lived in Alaska for 8 years and worked quite a bit with Indigenous communities there. And there's a growing movement for what's being called tech, traditional ecological knowledge, and I guess you could say more Western scientific, principles to integrate the two things. And I think there's a lot of potential there for collaboration. We have to be careful to not sort of overplay the scientific end of it. There's a lot of traditional knowledge and stories and different modalities. But that's something I guess permaculture's been doing for a long time.
Yeah, I'm thinking of different ways that we can raise up Indigenous leaders or people who in the Indigenous communities who are interested in adaptation and, sharing their knowledge, and in whatever way they want to do that, and maybe just finding ways to support what they're doing on their own in their own communities. Yeah, it's interesting concept, and they could certainly, like in the North Carolina region, just approaching the Cherokee tribe and seeing how, is this useful in any way? What's your advice on this? And just including them in the conversation, however they want to be included.
I could definitely say, like my husband and his family are Blackfoot. There's no way that, like, if an agency or anyone came to them, that they would accept that. It would have to be a trusted person. So to be able to work into those communities and stuff like that, they're very shut off, they're very guarded, and there's a reason behind that. And so I think the wording just has to be very careful when it's presented to them.
Yeah, I hear you, and that's been my experience working with Indigenous tribes as well. Is you have to create the relationship first, and then have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes a long time to develop those relationships.
You also have to have the right messengers. You can go to others and find out how best to approach and use trusted methodologies. Yeah, because there's good reason for suspicion and distrust.
Yeah. So it's a great conversation to have and to keep exploring. And I know some permacultures, I believe some permacultures do have a relationship with the Cherokee tribe already, and I'm not sure. I know a couple of them have talked about interacting with the tribe. It'd be worth exploring in Western North Carolina. And then there's other people who are either Indigenous themselves or have been working with tribes for years in our community and related communities. And it could be a several-year project to create that trust.
Is there anybody in the circles that is already involved in this collaboration that could bring those voices forward? Like, are there any Indigenous people among us?
I mean, I have connections with the Lakota tribe.
Well, and I'm just thinking out loud. I mean, I have a lot of friends in Alaska. Maybe we could do some outreach there and get some people in these meetings from all the communities. Like, there's been, for example, the African American communities in America, you know, they have been dealing with catastrophe and apocalypse for a very long time, and they've already developed many of their own internal safety net systems. But unless you're in that world, you don't, you know, we don't know about those things. So it would be, I would love to see, you know, more diversity on this screen. So maybe we could all do a little bit to you know, invite. I mean, I say that having been absent for a long time, so.
Karine, the first, did you say that you're basically ready to start introducing the first two manuals to beta? Are they pretty well ready to go? Then to take off on what Seal is saying, then maybe that's what we should try to start scheduling is you know, some rollout workshops where we can target, you know, local community leaders of various sectors and whatnot to say, hey, this is here's you know, just this is our concept, this is what we've got so far, and can you review this and then join us on such and such a day for a town hall meeting, and we'd like to get your feedback once you've had it, you know, give them some time to digest it, and then have a meeting to get their, you know, their opinion on things. I think it's kind of timely that we should start talking about setting that up now with the two handbooks that, you know, the two, what are you calling them, chapters, manuals, two separate and distinct manuals, right? So with the two manuals that we have, you know, to try to tap on everybody and see who they have in their network or who they can identify. We can disseminate this information as a beta, and that we're looking for them to come back and hopefully participate in a meeting like this.
We would love that. And you know, if anyone here wants to do that, that would be great. And you know, you could coordinate with me on feedback, or if you need any resources or anything, be happy to help assist with that. I'm doing that on my own now with different networks and people, individuals, even just like a one-on-one conversation in some cases with group leaders. You know, I'm doing that right now, getting feedback. So anyone else that wants to do that, it would be wonderful. Those things, we're going to have a hurricane manual, the intro manual, an overall manual, and the fire manual very quickly, and like within the next couple of weeks, and hopefully two more by the summit. So yeah, we really want people to look at them and give us feedback.
So
I was just thinking about, oh,
go ahead, Connie.
Oh, I just want to throw out, as far as fire, like the Northern California tribes are gaining rapid recognition as being experts in fire management and Indigenous, you know, methodologies of mitigating. And I haven't been there for so long. I don't really have connections, but I can network.
We have some connections, and a lot of that will be listing them in our We Regenerate database and letting other people know, hey, these guys are available, and on their terms, whatever their terms are, and how they want to be available. But yes, that's in process. Connie, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so PINA has a lot. I'm still exploring the whole website and everything that you've got out there. But if these, I don't know if the website has something like that, or if it would be like we could just create a page on the website that's separate and apart that we could point to, that would have these manuals, these beta manuals on it.
That already exists.
Yeah.
That already exists.
And so
I'm going to put it in the chat.
The link? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'll do that right now. Yes. And Leslie?
Yeah, I wonder, again, this is like not either or, but just building on everything that's been said. If it could, an idea would be to ask, since it is at this stage, right, and the input from these communities has not been up until this point, offering to pay for people to review, and look, getting at what is their capacity to do this, what would they need to do it, and an offer of compensation may or may not be important or just appreciated around that consideration, and then really an eye towards how would this guide serve your community or not, how could we make it useful to, for example, to a tribal community. But yeah, that thing about they're I think asking, would you come be part of our thing that we're doing to help you, and is a little bit, how can we shift it more to really be about supporting, having a lens of understanding who they are and where they are as we engage them.
Oh, should I raise my hand? I've been rude.
Go ahead.
Oh, just thinking out loud. I keep thinking out loud here, so things are coming out of my mouth that maybe haven't been processed. But I'm recalling that I've seen that some of the tribes are starting to do workshops themselves. So maybe there are things there that we can plug into. But again, it's that thing of, not reinventing the wheel. But I'm pretty sure they're already starting to do those kinds of things. And I think they might have funding it from the state of California, because they are becoming more recognized as, having really valuable knowledge.
And if we, we do have a calendar feature on We Regenerate that could list those, for instance, if they're open to the public.
Oh, okay. But I can look up, I'd be happy to track that down.
Yeah.
If you're not already.
And, potentially, yeah, that's a good thing to explore. And it's what do they need? What do they want? What would actually feel helpful to them?
Hey, Karine, I just put on the chat the corrected link, because it's /disaster, not .disaster.
Yes.
And so when I'm looking at this, is it possible for you to put an action item, like a pop-up or something like that, for people to, kind of sign up for updates, or do you want to participate in this project? Something like that, so that we can actually start, if I were to forward this to people, I would want them to take the initiative to put their own information in there, so that we could reach out to them, rather than my tell you, hey, reach out to this person.
Yeah. Good. Yes, I'm sure we can do that.
Yeah,
great idea.
Once that's ready, then I think we can all start pumping this out and forwarding it and saying, hey, please, if you're interested at all in being part of this project, let's jump on this.
Yeah. Wow, Gloria, that's awesome.
Yeah. Is that available online?
It was just this week. I don't know if there's a recording. I was not registered for it, unfortunately. I only saw notice of it after it was over. But I did see a copy of the web landing page and the presenters, it was a very impressive group. I knew several of the presenters well from working with them, but yeah, things like that are a great resource for ferreting out people who can be helpful to this effort, and provide us some really good advice and guidance. I'll find the landing page at least and put that in the chat if I can relocate it here quickly.
So we have about 4 minutes. I want to make sure anyone who wants to say something has an opportunity to do so that hasn't spoken, maybe, or anybody else want to?
Just a quick
comment?
question, Karine, and I'm sorry, I apologize for being absent for so long, but is there a current fire working group?
No. No working groups yet. That's going to be the next town hall discussion.
Oh,
anybody else?
okay.
Anybody else that hasn't spoken yet that would like to?
Yeah.
Okay, Peace Foundation. Peace Foundation.
Yeah. I've just shared 2 footages about some activity which we did recently with the local community. It involved someone raised a point about indigenous knowledge. Of course, permaculture is about that culture coming out of indigenous knowledge and how it builds sustainability. And I think this is why all over the world, people are going back to the roots, because the conventional knowledge and the conventional knowledge in universities has not fixed the problem. We see the situation increasing, getting worse when it comes to climate change. So Peace Foundation, as a grassroots organization, we work with indigenous people like the Pygmies, the Batwa here. And the Pygmies have affiliation to indigenous knowledge and traditional cultural ways of doing things here, especially in Africa. Traditionally, the Pygmies used to stay in the forest, although because of, again, conventional knowledge, they have been displaced from the indigenous places and now they live in camps where life is not easy for them. And also where now, as a result of their displacement, there are many issues happening when it comes to the state of environment. So we see that as traditional people, as indigenous people, there is a lot of knowledge in them which we can tap from them and which we can use to increase on our body of knowledge in permaculture. I've been to share these ideas who can bring up a hand of help to support, like someone has talked of having these workshops, sharing with the readers, grassroots readers, so that we share this concept to them and we get their feedback in terms of them embracing this concept and then trying to work with them in enforcing the ideas that come out of permaculture. I see that the indigenous people like the Pygmies would be, yes.
Can you share your contact information? And also, if you can, please join the invitation that I put into the chat, the working group, so that we can continue this conversation, because we're running out of time right now. But it's an important conversation to continue. I just wanted to see quickly if anybody else had any last minute things to say in the group. Okay, well, we are up to our 2-hour time limit, and this is a really rich conversation. I so appreciate everyone coming here, and we will continue this for sure. And please continue in the group. Feel free to ask, continue to talk. You know, not many people are talking in the group, but share your resources, share your ideas, share your, you know, what you just shared, Peace Foundation, and keep the conversation going, okay?
Yeah.
Last minute question, when is our next meeting?
It's July 18th, I think, the third Friday in the month at 1 o'clock.
July 18th.
Yeah, and then don't forget the summit. We're going to have a web page up on the summit. Please promote that, and please promote the town hall too to people you think would be good to come to this, and use these resources that we have to keep this going. I so appreciate you guys' energy.
Yeah.
When is the summit?
It's the 18th to the 23rd of August in the evenings. The 23rd is going to be during the day. It's a Saturday, but Monday through Friday is going to be evening session, 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's already up in the work group. It's already listed in there, but it'll be up on the website soon.
Do you mean on Mighty Networks?
Yes, on it's in Mighty Networks work group, PCX work group, which I have the link to. Is an invite. If you're not a member, please join. It's low. You know, you can control the traffic that you get from it. And then yeah, it's also going to be on the PINA website, and you know, some of us are going to list it too on our websites. Please send it out in your newsletter, all that kind of stuff. Okay, I'm going to let you guys go. Diane, did you want to say something?
No, just
okay.
I'm grateful for being here. I'm glad you're doing this.
Yes, big thank you.
Thank
you.
Yes.
Yeah, and thank you guys. Great energy and great information. This is awesome. I'm going to try to put it all together and put it out on the work group, this conversation. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.